Okay. So this is page 15 of your notes. We had looked at this part A and B, and part B showed the function. And so then part C gave you values. Now point out it asks for functional notation, so you better show that, as well as then the calculations. D gave you a different formula, and so it asked for the variable costs. And so I did those. If you'll notice, I went ahead and gave the fixed cost as well. It did not ask for that in that particular one, but that could be a question you might see on the test. So I went ahead and did that. All right, so that was 1.4. 1.4 is due tonight. So be sure that you complete that assignment in WebAssign by tonight. Now, the review is what we're going to look at today. But I just want to remind you that for the exam on Wednesday, we will not be in this room. We will be down the hall. It's down the hall and on your right. It is actually room 101. So it's a bigger room. It has individual desks. Okay. Be sure you bring your pencil, your calculator, and then of course I'll have the test. It is not open notes like the quiz was. Okay. If you forget your calculator, I have one that can be borrowed, but that will cost how much? 5 points. So be aware of that. Okay. And I only have one. So are there any other like logistic questions on that? 11:30 is when class starts. I usually leave my office, and I'll be more intentional on Wednesday to leave my office like 11:15. So I should be in there by 11:20. So if you have the ability to get here to class a little early, if you want to get started on it early, you can. I will give you from when you start the exam till 12:30. Technically class is over at 12:20, but I'll give you till 12:30 if you want. Okay. Yeah.
Great question.
I don't know. Sorry. It could be like 4 or 5, but there'll be A, B, C, and D. So I'm going to guess, we have 4 sections. So, just a handful of questions, but they can have several parts to them. 101. That's a good question. I could have looked before, but I did not. I'm sorry. So, right. And if you happen to be someone, I can't remember in this class or not, that receives accommodations and you want to schedule, just talk to me after class if you don't want to do it with the class. All right, so we have this review is broken up into sections 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. Expect some questions from each. We can do it in order, or if you'd prefer, we can like start on a section that you are most uncomfortable with and then work it that way. All right, so where do you want to start? 1.4? Yeah, that's what my 900 class did too, so I did it. All right, so here's section 1.4. So if you don't have your calculators, get those out as well. All right. All right, if you are having a business dinner catered and you pay a rental fee of $300 for the dining hall, plus $20 for each person who attends the dinner. Your total cost, C in dollars, is a function of the number of people who attend. Now, this one did not ask for you to identify the function in the variable, but of course, you know me, I'm going to do it. Plus, it could be asked on the test. So we're going to come over here and we are going to identify the function as well as the variable. All right, so what letter would you assign to the function? See, so you'll notice it says right here, total cost in dollars is a function. It tells you right there. So C is what? Total cost. Or if you want, you could even do, I'm okay when you're defining, you could do like that. Or if you wrote total cost, that's fine too. All right, what are we going to use? Does it tell us what to use for the variable? It doesn't, does it? Oh, it did? Oh, yeah, there it is. Thank you for seeing that. And N is what? Now, 14 asks for a total cost for a specific 50 people attend the dinner. I want to jump down to 15 first and go ahead and write the formula. All right, so the formula we know, the function is C and the variable is N. So I know I have C at N. Now, what are the two different types of costs in 1.4 that we looked for? Fixed and variable cost, okay? And again, I think in notes it had you put the variable cost first plus the fixed cost, which you can do, or if it makes more sense the other way, I don't care, all right? So let's just start with the variable cost. So when you look up here and read, what is our variable cost?
$20.
Remember where it says each person, per person, that sort of thing? So our number of people is N, so it will be $20 per person. And then we add our fixed cost, which is what? $300. So that is your fixed. So here is the formula. And just to remember the vocabulary, this is your fixed cost. Because it might ask, what is the fixed cost? What is the variable cost? So I just want to add all that of different questions that could be asked. All right, so now we're going to go back up to 14 and it says, what is the total cost if 50 people attend? So here's the value that was given. Were we given the function or the variable? Variable is people. 50 people. People goes with variable. So we were given the variable, which is N equals 50. How do I write that in functional notation? So if it asks you for functional notation, that's all you would write. But this tells us it wants to know that total. So we would do $20 times 50 people plus $300. So how much are we going to spend?
$1,300.
We should write it a little bit different so it doesn't look exactly the same. I mean, is that gonna come off?
I don't know. It depends on what that doesn't look exactly the same. So, because there could be things that well, I asked for the total cost. Oh, so we just typically do this. That's the only thing that's different. You didn't show functional notation, which it didn't ask for, so I wouldn't count off. But just be careful if it asked for it and you didn't show it, I would. Yeah. Okay, 16. A competing dining hall charges different rates. If you use their hall, your total cost would be, so here is their function. N is still the number of people, but total cost they're calling what? D. So my function in this one is D. N is still my variable. It says, what is the rental fee for this competing dining hall? And this rental fee would also be known as what in this equation? Say what? I don't want to know the amount. Yeah, fixed cost. So the rental fee is your fixed cost. So our rental fee, and that's your fixed cost is the $150. And then what is the charge per person, and what's that known as? Variable cost. And how much is that per person? Yeah, so charge per person is $30. So this is what it asks for. Again, I'm just going to reinforce what those are as fixed costs and variable costs. Which dining hall should you rent if you will have 25 people attending? So did they give me C equals 25 or N equals 25 or D equals 25? N is people, so this is your variable. So we have two different halls that we could rent from. So when I look at this, if I looked at the fixed cost, I'm going, dang, this one's high compared to this one. But their charge per person is different. So you have to be sure that you calculate to see which one is the better deal. So let's start with this one. We're going to calculate C at 25, which has the higher fixed cost. So it'd be $20 for 25 people plus the $300 rental. Listen, can someone calculate that and tell me how much we'd spend using that dining hall? $800. That's a pretty inexpensive 25 people. All right, then the other one would be D at 25. And so now that's 150 plus $30 times 25. So if I use this dining hall, how much am I spending? So if you only paid attention to the fixed cost, you would have chosen this dining hall because it has a cheaper fixed cost. But when you look at per plate, this is the better dining hall to use. We're going to save $100. Okay. All right, we'll just work this way then. We'll go to 1.3. All right, the graph below gives the typical height in feet of a certain type of sunflower plant, starting when the plant is just a few inches tall. The height, H at T, depends on the time T in days during which the plant, not the plan, the plant has been grown. All right, so on a graph, we have a vertical axis up and down and a horizontal left to right. What is always on the vertical? Function. Okay, so we know this is my function right here. So I'm going to come over here. Function is, they used H, which is height, and this is in feet. So then my variable is the horizontal axis, and that is T. And we're looking at number of days. All right. What is the height of the sunflower after 30 days? So here is the value that is given. Were we given function or variable? Okay, if you pause and you're uncertain, come up here to what you defined. This is days. Days goes with variable. So we know we are given the variable value. So this is T equals 30. So I'm going to come up here to 30 days. I'm going to go up and over. So the height at 30 days is equal to what? To what? Feet. Be sure, if you don't give me feet, I will count off. How many days does it take before the sunflower is 5 feet tall? So are we given function or variable? 5 feet, feet goes with function, so we're given function. So this is H equals 5 feet. Come up here to my H to 5 feet and then go across. And down. Where do you guys fall? 60. Okay. So notice if I'd gone, mine would have been a little bit different. Okay, so this is where I would have some leeway. You guys landed at 60, which is fine, but by the way I drew it, I probably would have landed maybe between 60 and 670. So I'll have some leeway on that, just dependent upon what your picture looks like. So just know that, okay? So, but we'll go with 60. So. That would be 60 days. Okay, 60 days. How tall does this particular species of sunflower grow? 10 feet tall?
No, 6.
All right, I'd go with 6 feet. How do we know that? What is that called? It's a word that starts with an L. What? Limiting value. It's your limiting value. So it's slowing down, and this is called your limiting value. Okay, where is the graph concave up? Where is it concave down? Explain in practical terms what that means. Okay, so concavity. We can have concave up and concave down. Where does it switch from concave up to concave down? What is that called? Inflection point, right? And that concavity changes. So if we start with 0 days, so what is the first part of this graph doing? Concave up. So I'm going to start and say concave up. And that occurs from 0 to what about right here? So we'll say to 40 days. All right, then it wants to know, explain in practical terms what each means. Okay, so we're only looking at concave up part. So this is where we say the what? Not the graph, not the function. Read what the function is. It's the height. So we say the height is, all right, what is it doing? Increasing at, all right, so we only want this part of the graph, not the full graph, only the concave up part. So at this point where I have the pink, is it an increasing or decreasing rate? Increasing rate. All right, so then we know it switches to concave down. And that's going to pick up at that 40 days and go till when? Yeah, if you gave me 140, that'd be fine, but I'm with you. It looks like that stops at 150. So if you said 140 or 150, just because 140 is the last number, I'd have leeway with that. All right, so this graph, the height is doing what? increasing at a decreasing rate because it's leveling out. So this one, I would say the height is increasing at a decreasing rate. All right, when is the sunflower growing the fastest? At the inflection point. This is at the inflection point, which we define that at what? 40 days. Where our inflection point was. So it's growing the fastest at day 40. Okay. All right. This page, I'm going to start and go from top to bottom because I think we'll be able to get it all in today. So, plus you guys on that quiz did better with 1.2 than you did 1.1. All right. So let's see. We just did 1.3. So now we're going to look at there's 1.1 and then down here's 1.2. Okay, 1.1 is when we dealt with a formula or an equation. And it only in 1.4 do you have to write the formula or the equation. 1.1 it'll be given to you. So the circulation C equals C at T of a certain magazine as a function of time. T is given by the formula. Here's your formula. And it tells us T is measured in years since the magazine started in 1992. All right, I'm going to go ahead and define my function and my variable. If it does not ask for you to define or identify those, if you don't, I won't count off. I still strongly encourage that you do that because then it makes the explanation seem a little bit easier to deal with. Okay, what letter goes with function? C, and what is C? Circulation of a certain magazine is your function. So I would say circulation, and if you just put circulation, I'm sure I would be okay with that, but of a certain magazine, because we don't know what you're circulating. And I'll just do MAG for magazine. All right. What are we calling the variable? T, and what is that? Years, and then yes, you have to say since 1992. All right, what was the initial circulation? So when you're calculating the start of something, the refrigerator temperature, the initial, what is it telling me to do? The variable will be 0. So because it says initial, then we know T equals 0. So this tells us the circulation of the magazine in 1992 at the start of this. So we would do C at 0 equals 1,200 over 0.1 plus 0.3 raised to the 0. Now, you don't necessarily have to write that on the test, but I'm telling you, I highly recommend it because it's very easy to accidentally make a calculator error. And if you have this written down, I can at least maybe give you a point. All right. Also, know how your calculator works and how to pull this up. Asking the day of the exam is waiting too late. So be sure that before you leave today, you know how to put this into your calculator. Now, this doesn't say, I'm gonna go ahead and round to 2 decimal places. Since it doesn't say, if you give me 2 decimal places, great. But also, can you deliver 0.27 of a magazine? No. So if it's something like that, if you gave me the whole number, if it didn't specify, I would get that because you can't circulate 0.27 of a magazine. But just to be more exact, I'm going to round to 2 decimal places. So it was 4,727, and then it was 0.272. So that is 27. And what does this represent? Pounds, grams, magazines. This is how many magazines were in circulation in 1992. So be sure that you label that because you didn't have to get in that habit in WebAssign. All right, use functional notation. So I'm going to be looking for this to show the circulation of the magazine 1 year after it started. Then calculate. Okay, let's do the first part of it. So functional notation. What is 1?
T.
That is T. Years since 1992 is T. So this is T equals 1. How would I show that in functional notation? C at 1. So that's the functional notation. If that's all it asks for, that's all you have to give me. So I haven't even looked at the test yet today. It could ask you this in part A and then part B calculated. It may separate it, okay? This particular one then is saying, okay, now calculate. So we would do 5,200 over 0.1 plus 0.3 raised to the first power. Does anybody have that calculated?
13,000.
Okay, and that's 13, no, not dollars. 13,000 what? Magazines. So used to doing total cost, but it's gonna do months. I left off a 0, didn't I? I was gonna say, did it decrease? I said 1,300, but it's 13,000. So, wow, this is what it was when it started. What year was this in?
1993.
1993, 1 year after 1992. Okay, didn't ask that, but that could be a question on the test. All right, find C2 and explain its meaning. Okay, this one's gonna have an explain. Don't give me a whole lot of room. So now we're doing C at 2. 5,200 over 0.1 plus 0.3 raised to the second power. I don't think this one comes out evenly, so go ahead and give me 2 decimal places.
360.
300 and what?
68.
60?
68.
68, and then what was the decimal?
0.42.
42, and this is magazines. I'm gonna abbreviate that. Okay. So it told me to find C at 2. That's this right here. Now it says to explain. Now, you don't have to write this sentence exactly like I do, but to me, it makes the most sense. And what I've been doing in classes, okay, when I have to explain, I start out with my C. My C is the circulation of a certain magazine. So that's what I'm going to write in place of C. And I'm not going to abbreviate in my sentence. I'm going to spell magazine out. All right, so what we've done is the C. Now, what would I put in place of the 2? 1994, because it's 2 years since 1992, so 1992 plus 2 more years is 1994. So this is in 1994 is, and you could give me this full value that we just did, or you could round it to the nearest whole number, knowing we can't deliver a portion of a magazine. I would take either as correct. I'm gonna put 27,368. Now, I don't have to say magazines again, because that was defined in the definition of the function. So this is the explain that was asking for. 4 says, by how much did the circulation increase from 1 to 2? So we can see it increased. Here was year 1. Here was year 2. How do I find out that increased value? Subtract. I'm going to take C at 2 years and subtract C at 1 year. And I'm going to do the whole number values. So I'm going to use, I'm not going to do 0.42. If you did on the test, that's fine. I'll give you full credit. So we had 27,368 minus 13,000. So how much did it increase by?
2,368.
What? Thank you. When's the last time you guys bought a magazine? Have you, I mean, it used to be a big deal. Like when I was in high school, 17 magazine was the big one for teenage girls. And yeah, I mean, I don't know the last time I bought a magazine.
2006.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you guys just go straight to the internet. So, and then it got to where, then as I grew up, like Southern Living and those sorts were good, but then it was like all ads, and it was like, nah, never mind. Okay.
Write that formula first.
Here.
You're gonna count off if you don't write.
No,
it.
if you give me that only, that's fine, because that's all it asks for. But I would say if you write these numbers, that way if some reason this is wrong, that makes that wrong, I can at least follow more.
Yeah.
You don't have to show the C at 2 minus C minus, yeah. I just put that in notes so that way someone can know where it came from, is the only reason I do that. It's not required for the test. All right, calculator use. Be sure that you can correctly put values into the calculator. So this says calculate C at 2,790. So C at 2,790 is equal to 6 times 0.6. And then this is T divided by that. So my T is 2,790 divided by 6,069. And it does say round to 2 decimal places. Okay, so in my calculator, I'd start out with 6 times. Now I'm going to put in 0.6 or 0.6. It's the same thing. Now I need to get up into the exponent, so that means fraction. Oh, wait. I did not go up. Go up to your exponent. Now put in fraction. And it can handle a fraction in the exponent. 2790 over 6069. Did we get the same answer? All right, 2 decimal places, 4.74 or 4.75. And we don't know what this is, so we don't have to label this one. Did you have a question? No. Okay. So, if you need help with your calculator, be sure and ask me after class, but there'll be some calculator questions. Okay, 1.2 was from the table, which you guys tended to do better on this. It does not ask to identify or define the function and the variable, but that could very well be a question on the exam, so be sure to know how to do that. I'm not gonna write it out like I did above, but I am gonna put it out here. So this is a horizontal table. You might encounter a vertical table, so be able to do from either. So what goes on top, function or variable?
Variable.
Always, always, always. So this is your variable. This is your function. Now, does anybody remember what got introduced on the table that we had to calculate? There was a formula. Average rate of change. So expect that. We do have to answer that, but expect that on the test. Okay, so from the table, find P. What are we talking about? Table shows below the population of Oklahoma from the last 4 census tabulations. So P is Oklahoma population, T is year. Okay, P at 1990. So P at 1990 equals what? Yep. So we come here, 3,146,000 what? Oh, people in Oklahoma, or I'm just gonna say Oklahomans. I'm just gonna do that. But if you said people in Oklahoma, now if you just said people, well, there's people in Mississippi, there's people in Virginia. So Oklahomans. So here was the first question. The second part is asking us to explain. So again, we start out by saying the Oklahoma population. So we just defined that part, the Oklahoma population. What? In 1990 is. And then that number. Now, technically, you don't have to say Oklahomans again because we defined where they're from here, but if you did, that would be fine. And don't forget what at the end of the sentence. What starts the beginning of a sentence? Capital letter. I will count off half a points for those. All right. Now, number 7 is this average rate of change. Expect an average rate of change question. So you don't have to write out what the formula is, but I'm going to here just so you'll have it in your review. So what's in the numerator? Change in function. Over change in variable. Now, I did have a handful of students, but enough that it occurred that I remember they wrote this on the quiz, but yet when they put the numbers in, they flipped it. So be careful. All right, so my change in function from where? 1990 to 2000. So we're looking here. So change in function, which number do I put first? Remember, we go backwards. So I would have 3,451,000 minus 3,146,000 over 2,000 minus 1990. Now, for the final answer in the average rate of change, what am I going to be picky about? What do I want to be sure that you include?
The one.
Where does the 1 go? In the denominator, the bottom, also label. Okay. Now, in notes, we subtracted that, wrote it here, we subtracted that and wrote it there. You don't have to show me that step. You can go straight from here. Alpha y equals 1, and in the numerator, 3,451,000 minus 3,146,000 over 2,000 minus 1990, and the calculator is gonna do all the calculations of putting it in lowest terms. And so my answer will be over 1. So it's gonna be 30,500 over 1. Now, 30,500 over 1, but I will also be picky that you tell me what 30,500 is and what 1 is. So what is the numerator? Yeah, I'm gonna say Okies just for short. Over 1, what? Here. Now, if you gave me 30,500 Oklahomans and wrote out per year, that means the same thing. You would get full credit for that. Okay, but if you just give me 30,500 and you don't show per year or over 1 year, I will count off. Okay, now this does say to explain. So in the explain, we're looking to see if this is an increase or a decrease. What determines that? Positive or negative, right? So since this is positive, that tells us that there is an increase in the population of Oklahoma. Of 30,500 per year. Now, can I stop there? Does that mean it's always this amount per year? That only occurred when? Between 1990 and 2000. If you chose another decade, 1990 to 1980, it could have a different rate of change. So we have to be specific. Okay. All right, last one. Use functional notation to express the population of Oklahoma in 1998. Then estimate the value. Okay, tell me the functional notation. Yeah, 1998. Sorry. So this is the first part of the question. Now, my first thought would be come up here and then I go, oh, there's no 1998. But 1998 does fall between these two. And we just found the average rate of change per year between these two. So what value will we start with? Where do we look? We start at the population in 1990, and then we will add the average rate of change, because this is what happens per year. And 1998 is how many years from 1990? 8. So this is 8 more years. Now, you don't have to show this on the test. The purpose of me doing that is so then you know where my numbers came from. So the population in 1990 was 3,146,000. And then we will add the 30,500 per year for 8 years. So in 1998, we would estimate how many Oklahomans are there. Does somebody have that?
3,390,000.
390,000?
Yep.
So what I put in boxes is the things that you would have to give me on the test. Okay. Now, what I told my other class was, this is a great study guide resource. But that doesn't mean there won't be some different types of questions on the test. Like I said, I might ask for these things. I might ask, what year is this? So my advice to that class was, study the review, You have a great number of examples throughout notes. And you can also print your assignment and practice those. My other bit of advice. Do not assume that looking through your notes and looking through your already worked problems ensures that you're ready for the test. Because if you do this, okay, yeah, I understand that, and you do that, that doesn't mean that you can actually do the work. I know from experience, because my very first college algebra test that I took in college, that's how I studied. My notes, I went through my assignments and went, oh, I know how to do that. Okay, yeah, I understand that. Y'all, I can still see that big fat red 76 at the top of my very first college algebra test. And for someone that was always good at math, I about died. So exam 2, did I study the same way? I chose my behavior. I would rewrite and work without looking at my notes. And I would do it over and over and over and over until I could work them without the assistance of my notes. So there's a bit of free advice. So hopefully you can avoid the stuck in stomach